should we rock and roll here? Are you still manning the waiting room? I don't want to pull you away from anything.
Yeah, I think we can go ahead and get started now. I'll keep letting people in as they join, but yeah, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us. We were really excited to do this and talk about this. Has been a wild year, and so last summer, I guess May is when we had the visa freeze, and then June we had the social media monitoring and all that going on. And I think Jay, what are we saying about a 35% drop somewhere around there? Uh,
35.6, but that's only if you compare it to 2024 numbers,
okay.
and that's
Yeah.
the way we want to look at it. So, um, but yeah, but it was definitely a shit show of a summer for a lot of us. And many of us had high expectations of what the summer was going to look like, and those kind of evaporated before our eyes. So yeah, we're definitely going to dive into that data here. Ted, should I just cut to the chase and jump in here and start sharing charts, or do you want to? Is there anything you'd like to say to the room before we get started? Hey, James, nice to see you, brother.
Hey, how's it
No, I
going?
think. Hey, James, how's it going? Yeah, no. If anyone has questions, go ahead and throw them in the chat. We will try to get to them towards the end here
Mhm.
when Jay's done running through some of the charts, and we're gonna try to make this as fun and informative for all. So
Awesome.
if you got something on your mind, feel free to share it in the chat, and we'll get to it as soon as we can. So yeah, let's go ahead and get started, Jay, and show them what you've been working on. This is really cool stuff. So
Rock and roll. So everyone, this is the zoomed out look. We should start here. The first thing we need to know about this page is there's a blue line that's what we consider an average year. So that goes all the way back to 2018. So we added up all the visas that were issued by each country. You can see that this changes if I select, say, Morocco, then my chart will change, and you'll notice that these things move, right? Um, the blue line is the average year, right? And the orange line is the current year. Um, and down in the bottom, you've got your months, right? So you can see really we were in tune with having an average year up until March. And then we did a little bit great there in the spring. But then when everything changed in May, you see that that orange line, which is the current year, really dropped below the blue line, right? And if you remember anything from middle school geometry, there's that whole thing called slope or rise over run. So if you just wanted to see kind of, you can put your finger by the screen almost, and you can see, okay, that's a pretty straight slope for that current year, but it got outperformed by the average year right there in May to June. Now, this is an old chart. The data is new, but we've had this for a while. Some other things here that are always helpful is you can do a top down. So if I wanted to look at Africa, I could see, okay, well, Nigeria issued the largest number of visas at 4K for the full year, but it's red, meaning that it performed below average on that previous page. I'll just show you that. Jump over here, go to Nigeria, definitely a market that a lot of us have our eyes on. And then this really puts it in perspective. So you can see that blue line we talked about slope, right? When I go over here to May, it just shoots straight up to the moon. But this orange line, which is that current year, really takes it on the chin, right? Does everyone see what I'm talking about, Ted? Does that kind of make some sense?
yeah, and if anyone has any questions or needs more clarity, please feel free to to throw a question in the chat. But
Yeah, please.
yes, it makes sense to me. So
We don't want to leave anyone behind here. So anyway, so now we go back and see all countries. I can do top countries. I can click Asia. I can see now let's do an Asia and Africa. So we'll just select Asia. Looks like my computer's lagging a bit, Ted. It just changed to Asia, so you can see China mainland with the largest number of visas issued, and India, but both under their average. Whereas Vietnam looks like a place where outperformed its average for this year. Um, we'll just jump over again. I just want to show everyone this comfortable so that if you have questions about things, you know where we can go back to look. This third page is educational level. So let's say I'm a community college and I'm looking to recruit in Asia, and I can even go over here and select different regions if I want. But I put my cursor over Vietnam. You can see 2,467 visas were issued throughout the year for Vietnam, and it was 22% above its average year. All very helpful. But there's a problem with this tab. It doesn't give us any glimpse to what happened this summer. And so that's why we built out this new page, tap, ta, 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 where you've got a whole lot happening here. And I want to break it down slowly. So what we have down here, we'll start with this country breakdown. It's the easiest thing. Once we understand this, everything else becomes a bit clear. So the country breakdown table, I've got visas issued, right? Over the last 3 months, right? These up here, you can see the latest 3 month F-1 visa performance as expected versus expected. And you can see China issued 25,000 visas over the summer. And you can see India issued 15,165 F-1 visas over the summer, right? But what we have here is expected visas, and this is really important. Everyone keeps comparing this to 2024. And I think what we need to know is, hey, 2025 is doing pretty good. I want to know, how do we perform we should have gotten over the summer of 2025? And the way we calculated that was we took the average of each month for each country. And then we said, okay, if I have a 10% in September, 10% in October, 10% in November, if every month in a magical world, I'm seeing 10% more visas issued this year than on an average year, I think it's safe to say I'm going to expect 10% more to be issued in June, July, and August. And so we took these average percentages and applied them here. And so that's how we came up with these numbers for expected. So we expected China to issue 45,000 visas over the summer. And clearly it did not. It only issued 25,000, which means it underperformed by 44%, leaving us with 19,000 unissued visas that we were expecting, well, nearly 20,000. And then you've got this column here that's severely affected, right? So you can see different. So this is largely unaffected, right? Uh, that's Taiwan, right? Taiwan was largely unaffected by the summer. So this is very helpful. You can sort by this. So for instance, if I wanted to sort by visa issued, it would do that. If I wanted to sort by severity, it could do that. So here it's doing it by visa issued. I can scroll down. I can see, okay, these are the countries down at the bottom that issued the fewest visas. These are the ones at the top that issued the largest amount of visas. So then what we do is, so we have some slicers up here, right? If I want to look at Asia, right? I can do that. And this is going to change over here to where I'm just seeing Asian countries in the table. I'm also going to just see Asian countries here in this bar chart, but maybe you're saying, well, it's too many countries, so I can narrow it down and go over here and I'll say, we'll look at East Asia. And then everything changes, and then it becomes very easy to really look at. So when we talk about this y-axis, that's telling me that percentage, that deviation, what percent it underperformed or overperformed in some instances, right? Japan had the smallest percentage change over the summer, whereas over here you've got China, with a 44% drawdown. You've got, what is this, British National Overseas in Hong Kong, which was 92%. And we saw Taiwan earlier, right? So Taiwan was 10% down over the 10% below expected. So 10% to us is not a really big percentage gap. So that's why it was largely unaffected, if that makes any sense there. All right. I can move around here and look at South Asia. I know we have a lot of people that recruit in India, Bangladesh, Pakistan on the call. So I will do this, and there we go. And so I can see here that Sri Lanka had the smallest percentage drawdown, and Afghanistan had the largest, right? And Nepal, country I've certainly recruited my fair bit in, had a massive drawdown of 80% over the summer. Now, if you want to see what that looks like, I'm going to jump over here to my yearly issuance page. I'm going to scroll down here to Nepal. And you can see right there, it really just wanes. The momentum just really slows down here in that top arch, while the average year just kept going higher and higher and higher. So that's how we know that Nepal really did take it on the chin there pretty hard. Now, there's this other chart over here. This is a scatter plot, and this has two different things it's measuring. One is the number of missing visas, right? So anything over to the right has the largest number of missing visas. So China is missing 21,000. I'm sorry, India was missing 21,155. Over here in the y-axis, the percentage that it goes down, like 80%, right? So we can see Nepal there with that 80% drawdown. And then the size of the circle has to do with the volume of visas. So obviously India's got a much larger volume, so the circle is going to be bigger. The amount that were not issued is a lot, so it's going to be off to the right. Whereas Nepal, relative to India, is a very small number of visas, but it was affected by a very large percentage. So that is how the scatter plot is used. So Ted, I've broken this down. I know that, excuse me, probably that's a lot to digest. How do you want to move forward with this? What should we talk about? What questions do we have? Where do we want to
go? I was wondering if we could do some comparisons of countries and maybe dig into that country breakdown. I think when we were going through this earlier this week, looking at some countries that might appear to be doing well, but maybe they're not doing as well as we think, based on the number of students they're bringing in or some other trends that we might want to talk about.
Yeah. So, Ted, on our I-94 dashboard, that's one of our dashboards that our clients get, they have a comparative page where they can say, I want to look at this benchmark country, this focus country compared to a benchmark country. Like, let's say I want to compare India to China to see if India is outperforming or China is outperforming, right? So here, what we can do, the best way to look at that is to see which country had the best relative strength. And I'm going to look here at this deviation percent for that. So, for instance, we got,
hey, Jay,
I was recently in Pakistan. Yeah.
Hey, sorry to interrupt. We have a question, and we might be able to. Any idea of how much of the negative effect was due to visa appointment backlog versus denials? Or just that might be something that applies to this if we want to talk about it. But
so I'm kind of the data guy. I like the numbers. To answer that, unless something's actually published, which I haven't seen anything really come out and say that, it's most speculative. I do know that on a personal level, when I was in Nepal and I was seeing, we have this meeting where the embassy spokespeople come out. The way they talked in 2025, right before the summer in the spring when we went, was very different than the way they've talked about students in the past. There was a lot of kind of distrust for the students, a lot of concern about fraudulent documents, people overstaying visas. It became very clear that the people working in the consulate were not looking out for the students' best interest necessarily. So from just simply a personal perspective, I would say that I do think there was a lot of it going towards just refusals. I think visas were refused, but you've also got the fact that they froze visa interviews in late May until they could get the social media stuff fixed or set up. And then they started vetting, and the vetting increased the time of the process for those visa interviews. So you had a lot of that as well. So I'd say that it's a mixed bag. It's hard to pin it down. But what we do know is that it affected countries differently. So does that answer that question, Ted? Do we think we're good there?
And we've got a couple others that, I mean,
Yeah.
sorry to pause. We'll take a break a little bit later and go over more of the questions if we have some, but a question about where we get the data. We can
Yeah.
talk a little bit about that. And then let's see. And then curious if there's notable places where there was a big difference or maybe a much larger drop in one education level compared to the others. And we can look at a little bit of that with, but yeah,
Sure.
I'll let you go from there. So, and then we'll pause
Yeah.
later
So
for a group of questions.
Mhm. So yeah, if I were first, the first question was, where's the data come from? So the office that issues visas is the U.S. State Department, right? And so it's their data. They used to issue monthly visa data on a regular basis, and they really stopped that for the longest time, and only in the last month issued the summer visa data for 2025. So that is where the visa information comes from. Now, in regards to how one country did compared to another, let's go back to this Pakistan example because I think this is pretty good. So I was in Pakistan recently, and I shared a photo on Globetrotters. It's in our Pakistan video, which people can see on our YouTube channel, and I think we just put out like what Peru and Brazil on that as well. So the Pakistan fair was great. Lots of students, very enthusiastic, and what I saw was what I've been kind of betting on, that students were less affected by everything that was going on than schools were. So institutions like universities, we saw this as threatening, a lot of uncertainty, and so we pushed pause, became very cautious. So when I went to Pakistan, there were big crowds of students and not very many universities present. It was a great opportunity. And the way I can see that data wise is right here. So Pakistan had a 46% underperformance of what we expected over the summer. So that's pretty scary, right? That's a big percent. But don't forget, right, that Nepal had an 80% drawdown, right, from what we expected. Bangladesh, right, had a 61% underperformance. India had a 58% underperformance of its expected. So when you look at it, Pakistan really did much better, came out much better in the summer than any of those other countries. And you can see that in this table too. So like here's Pakistan with that 46%, Bangladesh with 61%, Nepal with 80%, right? Sri Lanka is the only one that had a really small drawdown, but they don't issue a whole lot of visas. So, but a really great market to recruit in. I've been there several times. It's just gorgeous. But anyway, so I mean, yeah. So for me, when I look at this, I'm not only looking to see, okay, like the countries that didn't get drawdowns. I'm also saying which country had a better off summer than the other countries in its region, and that might be where I want to put some real effort and time into recruiting. Ted, you got some other questions over there? I'm happy to take them.
Not at the moment.
All
Not
right.
not right now. So,
Okay. Why don't we do something a little different here? Let's unclick South Asia and unclick Asia. And what I want to do is I'm going to sort this table by severity. Severity is, if it was largely affected or not. And then what I want to do is I'm going to scroll down so we can see that largely unaffected. You've got some really small countries in here, right? But Australia is a fairly big one that was largely unaffected. It only had a 2% underperformance from what we expected from it. And if I scroll down, I see more and more of these countries. What I wanted to show you was that there were some that actually outperformed, and that's valuable information. So I'm just scrolling down here. There we go, outperforming. So these are some small countries. Azerbaijan, Chile is of interest. Denmark is of interest, and let's see, where is Thailand? Yes, that right there. That caught my attention pretty big time, Ted. Thailand issued 1,970 visas over the summer. We were expecting 1,600 visas, so it actually outperformed what we expected this summer by 17%. It issued 287 more visas than what we were expecting. So this kind of data, if you had access to it, you can really see a lot here. We can go over here, Ted, to that yearly issuance. And instead of Nepal, let's click Thailand and just see what happens. There you go. Look at that. June, July, August, off to the races. That orange line, that's current year, right? Just off to the races, whereas the average year just kind of plodded along. So in this instance, for me, when I go over to that webinar snapshot and I see the 3 months, right, and I see that Thailand is outperforming, for me, that makes me wonder, is this a new trend aligning for Thailand? Is Thailand in a better spot than what we might have expected because it did so well over the summer? We can look at different areas, South America. You can see, Chile. We just talked about Chile being an outperformer. We see it right there, right? But obviously down towards the end, we see Venezuela, right? Over here, we've got a large company, that's Brazil, right? Brazil, largely unaffected, Ted. I mean, we're missing 52 visas from them. That's just not much at all. It's only underperformed its expectation by 2%. I mean, there's a lot to take away from this kind of data, this kind of breakdown. Ted, we've talked about Eastern Europe. We've talked about the paradigm shift. That's something that we've done quite a bit of, and so right over here we see Hungary is outperforming, Bulgaria outperforming. You can see here Poland. We've talked about Poland a bit. Poland is only down 16%, a very small drawdown over the summer. Definitely of interest, whereas Ukraine definitely took it a bit harder. We've got Western Europe. We've talked about several countries there. We have a video on Spain, I think, coming out in about a week or two. And you can just see kind of this is what we're looking at in this area, Southern Europe.
Yeah, and I'm going to put that link to our YouTube in the chat there. These weekly, we try to do it every week. We post data insights and updates as we can. And so if you guys want to follow that, you'll be able to get some weekly insights without having access to this dashboard as a client, but clients get full access to this dashboard, of course, and all the information you're seeing. I don't want to interrupt your flow, Jay. I think something else that I was interested in, I can't remember if you've gone over it today or not. I got stuck kind of looking for a link, but East Africa and a few other regions and countries we were talking about earlier this year before the summer happened.
Yeah.
So
we were all about East Africa. And we weren't wrong to be all about it. It's just the data changed, right? So I can go over here to my scatter plot. Remember missing visas, right? Zimbabwe is a country that we were deeply in love with. We saw a lot of potential there. A lot of the things that were kind of anti-Africa have changed that, but still they're missing 1,475 visas over the summer, right? So draw down to 68% from what we expected. That's significant. But if I go over here and I look at some of these other larger countries, like Ethiopia, it's underperforming by 25%. I look over here, Kenya, it's underperforming by 50%. East Africa changed quite a lot. And it doesn't make our original thesis wrong. It just meant that we have new data that we need to think about. So let's jump over here to Zimbabwe. Just give my chart a sec. So you can see this orange line, right? I mean, we were dead on, Ted. I mean, like, this thing is a monster, right? It outperformed its average year mean, by what is that? I mean, like, oh my God, that's crazy, such massive volume. But you can see in that slope, that rise over run, right? If you put your finger to the screen, the angle you see there is quite less than the angle you see here. So that's why Zimbabwe underperformed during the summer. But at the same time, I mean, gangbusters all year long. I mean, these are massive numbers. Ted, why don't we do this, if you don't mind? I think I've explained kind of how the dashboard works, how we utilize this data. Maybe now what we could do is make this a little more interactive, and if someone has a question, they could unmute and ask if that'd be okay. I think it'd just make for a more helpful discussion, a more fruitful
Yeah,
discussion, if that's
yeah,
okay.
we've got a good question in the chat, and I think this is something we you discussed slightly at the beginning, but how did we come up with the expected visas? Who came up with this number? Because
Yeah,
I do think that's important to understand
yeah.
this this
Um,
dashboard here.
why don't we could we let that person unmute and maybe come up for a conversation, if that's okay? Go ahead, please.
Yes, I was wondering, maybe I missed in the beginning. So the expected visa numbers,
Hmm.
how did you come up with the expectation?
Right. So what we did is we looked at how many visas were issued for each month and compared it to that average month. So for instance, I can show you easier than tell you probably. So for instance, if I go over to yearly issuance, right, and let's just take Zimbabwe, right? So what we did is we said, okay, this is the average for October, right? What is that? Is that 30? Yeah. And we issued 193. And so we figured out what percent that was. And then we looked at November, right? 72, and we issued, what is that? 466. So every month, what we did for each country is figure out what percentage it was outperforming or underperforming its average year. And then we made the conclusion that we would expect that each month moving forward would perform at a similar percentage level above or below its average year. So a very simple way is if I say, like maybe September is 10% above its average year, and October is 10% above its average year, and November is 10% above its average year. Well, we would expect that December is going to be also 10% above its average year, because that is in line with what we're seeing in the previous months. So the idea is taking the monthly averages this year compared to an average year, and then looking at those and averaging them out and saying, okay, yeah, so we've seen a trend of 10% increases on a monthly basis. We would expect to see that to continue during the summer, and it simply did not. Does that make sense?
So by average year, how many years are you looking at?
From 2018 to 2026.
Okay.
So yeah, so it's quite a nice spread of data. There's a lot of variety. So if we know that the average year jumps up, say 30% in some country for the month of May compared to the month of April, and then we notice that wow, this country jumped up 45%, right? Okay, well it's outperforming by this certain percentage, and then we can use that to forecast what we'd be expecting in the coming months.
All right, and we have Kelly Sumner from IU's. Yeah, asked earlier about, let's see, still wondering if have seen any differences within countries when you drill down to education level, or is it pretty even across community college, undergrad, and grad? So we could look
So
at some ed levels.
yeah, so let's go to ed levels. Now, this isn't going to be specific on summer, but what it will do is it'll tell us how we're doing for the year. So remember, Nepal had a pretty large drawdown uh, over the summer, but it's still well above its average year. So when you look at these charts, you might say Vietnam or Nepal. These are community college countries that send a large number of students to community colleges. And the color, the green, is that it's performing above its average year. and the red is performing below its average year. So, for instance, Japan or China or India, Taiwan, these countries have had maybe a hard year, but I can now jump over to the webinar snapshot and say, well, let's see how that played out over the summer. So, unchecked East Africa. I'm going to go in here to Asia. I'm going to go into East Asia for Taiwan. We just mentioned that. Taiwan over here, it was a drawdown or 10%, performed 10% under its expected visas, 398 visas. So this was largely unaffected. So for us, Taiwan took it better than other countries. It definitely showed some relative strength over the summer, but at the same time, it still did not outperform. Now, Vietnam, see, that would be in Southeast Asia. So we just looked at Vietnam. So Vietnam was down 35%. So that's a pretty significant number. 4,197 visas were not issued from our expected numbers, right? So when we go back to that ed level, I can say, oh, well, okay, Vietnam is doing really well, but seems like it didn't have the greatest summer. I can go over here to yearly issuance, go down to Vietnam, and I can see what the numbers actually really look like. So, well, I do know the alphabet. There we go. And there you go. And so, yeah, Vietnam had a surprisingly strong June, but really, sorry, July. I apologize. Really strong July, but August really weakened out, and that's how the percentage gap really narrowed. But at the same time, Vietnam had a really strong year. It's not really until you get into our current year that things start to become more and more clear. And we do that with our clients to that I-94 dashboard. Um, Ted, if anyone's interested in getting access to this dashboard or the I-94 dashboard, do you want to maybe explain to them how that could happen?
So I am putting a link in the chat for Become a Client where you can get access to all this info and play with it. And you get quarterly calls with us. And then you also get free access to this dashboard that is updated throughout the year. It includes all the data that you're seeing today and anything that we add from here on out. You can also shoot us an email there if you need more one-on-one help or a little bit more assistance on you may be analyzing some internal data and comparing that to the external data. We do all of it.
Yeah. And those quarterly calls are really helpful. I think one of my buddies, Ken, told me that I got an A+ on Rank Your Professor. Uh, when we had our call. So that was flattering. So yeah. So if you do want to reach out to us, we can definitely arrange that. I'm just going through some of the questions here, Ted. Where see, I'm looking at James.
Oh, hi, Ted. Hi, Jay.
Hey man, what's up?
Hey, how's it going?
Yeah, just basically, I think you guys have it right. I'm going to be looking through the budget, end of year budget, and see what's there as we scrape for whatever we can in the budget. But you guys, basically, right now, what you're saying is it's an opportunity to be the best while everybody else pulls back. And you can see when we went to the Nepali Road Show, the U.S. consuls did a met with everybody at the road show in Nepal, and they basically said that they are now trained to just be ruthless when they look at those documents. And then Priyani sent out another message after that saying, yeah, you really should tell your students to go to USCF Nepal and get their transcripts authenticated. I think even if you have the NACES evaluation, tell them to do it. It's like 68 cents a page. And they were saying they're skeptical when they see a bank statement that's just a one-time bank statement. So if they can take 3 months of bank statements and show they've maintained a balance, you might be one of those few Nepali students that gets the visa.
Yeah.
But then as everybody there talks to leadership at your university, you want to think about enrollment charts because you're trying to be better than all these universities that are pulling back, because it's actually an opportunity to really get your name out there and brand yourself in these countries over the next 2 or 3 years. And then you're going to take off in 2028, 2029 when the country returns to sanity.
Yeah, yeah, we're all looking forward to that.
Yes.
James, so using data, this is the first year that we didn't go to Nepal. Um, like I work for Louisiana Tech, and we go to Nepal every year. It's like one of our bread and butters, and using the data and seeing how hard Nepal got hit, it made it clear to us that now is just not the time to be looking. If I have limited resources, I have limited people, right, limited funds, right, limited time that I can travel. I need to be incredibly selective about where I go. And what I do is I go back to the data. I'm 100% data driven in my approach. I want to look at internal data where my university has strengths and edges in markets, and then compare that to external data. And I can tell you that for us, when I looked at it, it was a no-brainer. Yeah, we're definitely going back to Pakistan, because Pakistan makes sense mathematically. But we're going to take the foot off the gas when it comes to the ball.
Yeah, which
Yeah,
yeah, which Louisiana Tech can do because you're branded so well there that it's not going to affect you that much if you take a couple years off.
mm,
Where there's schools like mine where we couldn't afford not to go back once a year to Nepal because they'll forget about us because we just started with Nepal.
right.
And
Hmm.
agents in Nepal are happy to visit with us now. And they're telling us, sure, we may not start sending you students until 2029, but we're actually becoming the school at the top of their list now because we're one of the few
Yeah,
schools going there. So if yeah, for someone that's really well branded, the Stony Brooks, the Buffaloes of the world, you can skip it for a year. But
right.
lesser known schools, this is an opportunity for us to be the person that's noticed, to get best friends with Priyani at the USCF Center.
Yeah. And James, I always talk about time frame as well, because some schools they need to be able to show an ROI next fall. Other schools are positioned to where, hey, we can go and invest and build brand here and then show an ROI in the next 3 years. And to me, that's where I would look at absolute versus that relative strength. So if I'm looking at, I need numbers for next year, I want to see that chart like Thailand where it's just off into the races. And then I'm going to figure out, am I going to do this through agents? Am I going to do this through travel? Am I going to do digital marketing? What way am I going to hit this population very quickly so that I can maybe have a return in the fall? Or if instead I'm a university where, my senior leadership says, hey, right now there's no competition on the ground, go and build out that market. James, there's a really good analogy where these two guys are eating steaks, and one of the guy, he drops his knife, right, and the knife lands in his foot, and he looks at the other guy and goes, why didn't you catch the knife? And the guy goes, I'm data driven, man. I'm not going to catch a falling knife. Meaning, when everything's falling, through, and the trend is being destroyed, and then he asked the other guy, goes, why did you not move your foot? And he goes, well, I didn't think it would fall that far. So it's the idea that, like, yeah, I knew, like, for instance, India, right? We know India right now is in a pretty significant drawdown, but, the idea is like, well, do you go build India out on the belief that in 3 years it'll be doing really well and it'll be back to normal? Um, that might work in certain countries, but you take like Saudi Arabia, right? When everything was happening with the government funding and everyone was going great in Saudi Arabia, and then suddenly they cut that funding, and then some people continue to recruit in that area, thinking, oh well, this will bounce back, right? That's a real personal. That's that's where you have to do some real serious calculus, for yourself. Like, how do I feel about this? What can I convince the university? And so that's when I go back to those comparative charts, and if I run a chart of India compared to China, China's outperforming right now. And so if I have 3 years, I'm thinking China sounds pretty great. I need the volume. I'm going to go do some tier two and tier three cities with Sunrise in the fall. I've already registered for that tour. And I'm again basing it on data that Right now, China is outperforming India, and I need some volume. I need some volume of students to come in, so that's how I'm going to do it. Sorry, I probably just rambled a bit. I apologize for that, Nate. I mean, sorry.
Go ahead.
It was a good ramble. So, all right,
Well,
thank you.
yeah, yeah.
All right.
So, yeah,
Um,
I know that we're kind of running low on time here. I'm happy to stay as late as anyone else wants to. I do encourage everyone to think about reaching out to us to get access to this dashboard, sending an email to info@enrollmentcharts.com. Ted's also got the link up there to do that. Anyone else want to jump on? We can talk things. I can go back to the charts, whatever people want.
You
No,
guys just covered what I wanted to hear, so I can
awesome.
close my camera. And it was really just about what I was going to put you on the spot. And based on, this is information that's amazing. You guys are so cool. It happened in the past, though. So we can kind of surmise that things aren't going to really change too much with this administration. Maybe just little dips and
Right.
some different things. But I was going to ask you, in light of this, what are you going to do? How are you going to adjust your recruitment strategies? But you touched on that, so
Yeah, yeah.
onward. We can listen to other folks. Thanks.
Yeah,
Thanks again.
I really think right now what I want to be looking at is which countries are not suffering as much as the other countries,
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
Because if that's happening, like in Thailand, for instance, it's actually outperforming. If if I was saying, well, hey, I'm going to go ahead and go and recruit in Vietnam because my bread and butter's there, where I'm definitely going to add on a week and go and visit Thailand because right now Thailand, for whatever reason, isn't getting hit in the chin the way everyone else is. And so that's a market that I need to add to that region maybe. That's how
Mhm.
I do it. And for us, we're looking for volume. Ken and I have had some good talks. I've mentioned him a couple times in this. And one of the things we keep saying is, yeah, there's this paradigm shift where we see countries like Poland do well. We see countries like Spain do well. But the thing is that like we need a lot of students to make up for the volume that we're losing in India. And I run that comparative data and I say, well, China's doing better of the two. So I think I'll go build out there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks,
Thanks
Trina.
again.
Yeah. Was Nate next, Ted?
yeah, Mr. My Eval pal himself, Nate. Come on up, Nate.
Thanks. This has been very interesting. And a lot of the people that we work with are smaller, I think smaller institutions that, focus very much on like this sort of relational aspect and
Hmm.
kind of coaxing people over multiple, enrollment cycles to forming a relationship and then apply and then enroll. And so I guess my question is like, what do you do with, so you start to cultivate a prospect as a high school junior. And I'm looking at, you know, data right now that may change. I just wonder how you kind of reconcile those two moving parts, if that makes sense.
I don't think I follow the question, Nate. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So we're looking at data and sort of like prediction data, right? And
Right.
so I'm trying to cultivate a high school junior right now in Nepal
Okay.
or another country. And so what does this teach me or show me perhaps that can help me do my job better in terms of thinking 2 or 3 cycles ahead,
Right.
if that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. So I definitely get it. So for me, what I think of when I look at this data is I can use this data for market selection and I can use this data for forecasting. Right. So, and I think what you're saying is when I'm looking at 2 to 3 cycles ahead, we've been talking about Nepal here, so we can definitely continue going there. I'll just pull that chart up. Um, you know, someone might have said, you know, I mean, I know I was going gangbusters. I think and the amount of Nepalese apps that I had was just ridiculous. Last year. And it was just going phenomenal. We had, so many come in. But then the summer, when we saw things wane over the summer, I'm gonna click here on my webinar snapshot. And there I've got South Asia. I'm gonna click that. And I can see Nepal here with this 80% drawdown. Well, that right there, the fact that these 3 months, Nepal had such a bad time allows me to say, "You know what? maybe it's not time for me to abandon Nepal, but it might be time for me to take my foot off the gas there. It might be time for me to invest fewer resources into that market. And it might also allow me to go back to my supervisor, and if he's saying, "Hey, how are we looking for the fall?" I might say, "Well, I think we're going to be seeing fewer Nepalese students out of this pool of prospects or applicants or admits because I just don't think they're going to get visas issued. But you know, if we see maybe some students from another country that isn't hit as hard, I can tell you that we're probably going to be seeing more Pakistanis. So how would I approach it for next cycle? I would tell my leadership, I think of these Pakistani applicants, we're going to see a stronger number come in for the fall than for the Nepalese applicants. The way I'd look at it for 2 to 3 centuries out is I would start saying Pakistan is definitely doing better than Nepal on that percentage basis. I think I'm also going to go and start putting resources towards building out Pakistan because I think that will pay off definitely in the long run as Pakistan continues to do better and better and better each year. Does that help, Nate? Does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, yeah, fair enough. Helpful. I think that the concrete examples of exactly how modeling how I take your charts from an actual conversation, that was very, very useful.
Yeah, yeah, no, always a pleasure, man. Ted, anyone else that wants to jump on? Anyone want to see a particular country or chart? Drop that in the chat. We can definitely have like kind of a chart attack here, where we just go one country after the other. If anyone's got that, so yeah, let's
Okay. Yeah. No.
look at China. All right, so for instance, if I wanted to look at, you know what, I'm going to do, Ted. I'm going to break all the rules. I'm a rule breaker. I'm going to go to this I-94 dashboard, give people a glance of that so they can get a sense of kind of what more current information looks like. And so here,
Top secret. All right.
yeah, this is top secret, guys. So yeah, but here's what I want to do. I want to answer that question about China. So, why is China not showing up here? Oh, that's right, because they call it the PRC. I forgot about that. Yeah, for visa purposes, they call it People's Republic of China. Okay. And I'm going to look here at Asia. And so this right here, this is the data that we have from the I-94s. This is very recent. I think the last data we have is this January, and this is really the stuff that getting this new data to our clients is really important to us. But what I'm looking at here is this are the number of Chinese I-94s compared to Asia, and you can see that 40, it's at 0.4, so 40% or 1% of all I-94s from Asia are coming from China. Well, that's interesting, but that's not really what I want to see. What I want to see is I want to see when China is making an uptrend relative to its continent. That lets me know that China is showing relative strength. Just like when we were looking at the summer data and we were saying, hey, look, Pakistan took it on the chin much less than Nepal and Bangladesh and India. So I'm going to go to Pakistan. We have a video about that where we actually show this chart. This one right here tells me China's outperforming Asia, right? Um, let's change this and we will go over here. Sorry, my fat thumbs. See the world. Look at that. China's outperforming the world. And, we look at India because India is a great thing to compare it to since it has so much volume. And China's outperforming India. And the reason we say it's outperforming is because this is moving up and to the right. If it was moving down and to the right, it would be in a downtrend. Up and to the right is an uptrend. This tells me that if I were looking at China or India, I would pick China. If I was looking at China versus other countries in Asia, I'd probably pick China. And if I was looking at China versus any country in the world, I'd probably pick China. Now, that said, China's still performing under its own average. So we have to take this, with some sense of back to what Nate was saying. I'm thinking 2 to 3 cycles out. If China continues like this, 2 to 3 cycles out, I think I'm going to be very happy that I went and built that out. So I'm hoping that answered the question about China, and you got a peek of some data we weren't planning on showing, but it's definitely interesting. Chart for the Caribbean, Ken, yeah, okay. Um, Ken, we're talking I-94s or visas?
Visas from the
Visas,
first part of
yeah,
the presentation. Yeah, I think I saw a little bit of South America on one of the slides, but anything,
got it,
if you have
man.
anything isolated on it.
Yeah, absolutely. Always happy to chat with you about this. So, all right. So I'm going back here. We're looking at summer, right? I'm going to unselect South Asia. And did you say the Caribbean? Is that what we said?
Correct.
Okay. So there's the Caribbean right here, right? So we can see here that obviously Haiti, Cuba, things like that. I mean, yeah, but let's really look at some things that might actually be issuing some visas. So Dominican Republic, right? Look at that, largely unaffected, 2%. So it outperformed its average summer by 2% and issued 12 extra visas. Or if we go to the Bahamas, right, it underperformed its average summer by or expected summer by 17% and underperformed by 109. But these are not significant. But when you get to Jamaica, you see a pretty big drawdown. You get to Trinidad, a pretty big drawdown. I can go over here to my visa impact versus severity scatter plot. Look at that. The Jamaica had the largest drop in missing visas, right? We can see that there. I can see the size of this one's quite interesting. I want to hover there. Bahamas, okay. That's we've got 109 missing visas and 17% drawdown. If I go down here to these numbers here, these are very big, but right there, that's the Dominican Republic. I can see it because it's closer to this higher percentage value. And so yeah, sure enough, it was 2% over. Does that kind of give you some insight there, Ken?
I'm good. Thank you, Nick. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely, my man, absolutely. Um, I'm again open to talking charts or anything else going on. Yeah, absolutely, Chloe. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks everyone for being here. We'll hang out for a little bit to see if there's any more questions. And Jay, if there's anything that you feel like you want to last minute get in here, of course, by all means, go ahead. But otherwise, I'm really excited about how many people showed up today. We were excited
Yeah,
about this and sharing this info with you all. So thank you for being
I,
here.
I think
And
maybe it's a good thing to mention that if you do want access to the I-94 dashboards and the Visa dashboards next year for new clients, we're looking at $1,500 a year. But we are still running the current price of $1,200 up until the new fiscal year starting July 1st. So if that's something you're interested in, now's a good chance to do it because you can get in early. And you've heard from several of our clients on the call that are saying, "Hey, this is really valuable stuff." So, and obviously with those quarterly calls, you get insights that we're seeing that we want you to pay attention to. So anyway, so yeah, thank you guys. I really appreciate it. And reach out to us if you have questions. info@enrollmentcharts.com. Check out the Peru video and the Brazil video. That's on our YouTube channel. Ted does a great job editing those. So we definitely want to make sure that you guys get a chance to look at them. I'll hang back in case anyone's got some individual questions that you want to ask while we kind of wave our goodbyes to those of you that joined us. So
yeah,
thanks so much.